Welcome to Wisdom Journey, the podcast where we explore the path of building an online business from the ground up. Here, I share my wins, struggles, lessons, and experiments so you can learn, adapt, and grow alongside me. I also interview experts in their respective field. Whether you're just starting out or looking for new strategies to scale, this is your space to find inspiration and practical wisdom. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to take you on today's journey. Matthew Meredith is an attorney, CFP, and wealth strategist who helps families and entrepreneurs protect their assets, reduce taxes, and build generational wealth. He founded Meridian Legal Advisors, a one-stop shop that blends law, tax, and investment strategy into a single, holistic system. His work focuses on practical protection, ensuring wealth survives lawsuits, probate challenges, and unnecessary taxes, so it lasts for generations. Welcome to the podcast, Matthew. I'm doing great.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
Yeah, what's
Fantastic.
how did you start to do the work you do? Like what was the spark that led to all this? Yeah.
What started it all, huh? It was over a course of time. I was originally going into the medical field, and I had gone 3.5 years at LSU in pre-med, was in my second organic chemistry class, had paper cut myself, stamped the book with it to stop the bleeding. And it was during the summer, so we had class every day. And the next day I'm looking at my book saying to myself, oh my God, I don't even like blood. So I closed the book up, got up to walk out, and that kind of started the journey. I ended up moving to Houston, Texas, and I met a gentleman who was going through a divorce, was looking for a roommate. I was going to U of H to finish up school. At this point, it was marketing and advertising, and he was a former Wall Street trader. And I kind of asked him one day, hey, what do you do? Because he was always just enjoying his work in his life. And at this point, he was mostly doing venture capital, private fundraising, things like that. And he said, well, do you have any money? I said, well, I got student loan money. He goes, oh, that's perfect. Let's open you up a trading account. And that kind of started it. And so over the next many years, my introduction into the financial world kind of began. And I started as a equities trader, a market maker. So I would trade for people, trade for the company, moved out to Boca Raton, Florida, opened up a trading desk. And in 2009, we had our recession, our big crash in the market. And so I knew at that point I needed to do something else because prop trading was over. So I got into advising, and I did several years with advising. And kind of in 2017, 2018, I started realizing, hey, there's a lot of missing parts here. People were coming to me. They were asking me questions on how do I do this on the legal side? How do I do that on the tax side? And while I knew the answer, the response was always very simple from the higher ups is, hey, you're not an attorney.
Yeah.
You're not a CPA. Don't give this advice. And to me, this was a horrible ordeal. And so I'd send them off to a CPA. I'd send them off to an attorney for what they needed. And there was misaligned advice. The attorney and the CPA wouldn't talk. I'm trying to work with everybody, and the client would be more frustrated. And finally I said, look, I'm going to change this up. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to study tax, and I'm going to do all this under one roof. And so that when the client comes in, he's just working with me. He or she is just working with me, and it makes it much easier for them. And so that's kind of how the one-stop shop came to passing. Now it was much harder than I made it sound, as there was a lot of learning and reading internal revenue codes and learning law and the probate and everything else. But that was kind of the idea has always been, make it better for the client because the industry isn't doing it on its own.
You've seen families lose money, not because of bad investments, but because of poor planning. What's one story that still sticks with you?
I've seen people who retired and they were living their life great, and then an accident happens that was their fault. And the main thing that would happen is they would lose this account. They would get a judgment against them. And all of a sudden, all this money they saved up was up for grabs from a creditor judgment. And it really changes the way you look at things in protection. I was doing everything great on my side, managing the money, making sure they were making good returns, but I couldn't protect them on their side. And so that was my real introduction into asset protection and protecting people is how do you protect all the assets, not just the ones you're investing, but the
Yeah. Wow.
livelihood itself.
What did you what did you discover when, you started that journey on asset protection? Was there a solution to that problem?
Oh, there's many solutions, and that's the good part about it. And they're not difficult solutions, Wisdom. They're very simple type of steps that we should all be making. One of the pushbacks I would get early on is, "Well, I'm not that rich. I don't need to worry about it," or "I have insurance. I have an umbrella policy. I'll be fine." But the longer I've sat here in this chair and the more I've dealt with, the more I start to see is that's not always enough. It's these little hidden lawsuits that I like to talk about that'll happen. It's something you never expect. As an attorney, there is a chance that, hey, something could go wrong. I could be sued. I have malpractice insurance for that. Neurosurgeons and doctors have malpractice, errors and omissions, those type of insurances. And so you plan for those type of mistakes. But it's the little things. And I always use the example of hitting the school bus full of kids on your way home one day or getting in a fight with somebody. And the next thing you know, you're being sued. And so for a lot of people, the first thing is the conversation of not just what you have, it's how hard have you worked and how badly do you
Yeah.
want to keep other people
Well,
from taking this from you?
one of the things I talked about is when I introduced you, I said generational wealth. What do you believe most people misunderstand about generational wealth?
I think a lot of people think it's easy, that it just comes in and, you know, maybe their parents had a trust fund, maybe grandparents had a trust fund, and they'll be taken care of. But there's a lot more to it for generational wealth that people don't think about. There's management of the money. I've seen many times where they've picked the trustee of these trusts to manage the money for the children, for the grandchildren, and it just goes horrible. The trustee has no idea how to manage the money, to invest it, to grow it. They rarely can have the understanding of how the trust actually works. You can't just give money for any reason. There's kind of rules that are set by it. And so you'll see a lot of waste, a lot of giving large sums to what I would call the children of the world. I'm a firm believer we don't give children money. And by children, I kind of mean anybody under 25. And sometimes if you press me, I'll say 35 simply because
Ah,
I've seen some of these
wow.
these young adults just completely take that money and blow it up. And then they have nothing, and there is no more generational wealth. We all wish to have that really wealthy grandparent or parent
Yeah.
or uncle who nobody knows about. But for most of us, we don't have that. So generational wealth starts with us. So we have to learn how to build our own wealth, how to protect it, and then how to pass it on to our children and grandchildren when the time comes. And the sad part is, there's not really any education for that. You have to go see an attorney or somebody who deals in these type of things. So we're not taught these things to begin with. And so when people get this large sum of money or they make it over the course of time, it's so easy to lose if
Well,
we don't do the right thing.
well, in your experience, what's the biggest silent threat to people's wealth that nobody pays attention to until it's too late?
That would be other people taking it from them. I really see that as the biggest thing, but there's a lot more. As that one-stop shop, as we call it, we do tax, we do business formation, we do estate planning, asset protection, financial planning. We do all of these things together. And the point of doing it together is that they all align together. Yes, they're different disciplines, but the problem is that money, when you just talk about money alone, it all works together. You're investing it, growing it, protecting it, passing it on. And you need to align these things together. And most people, they'll go form a company to do their business in, but they don't protect that company in a way that they should protect it so that it doesn't spill over into their own lives. Another thing we see is people work their whole entire life, make all of these companies money, have all these assets, and they never think about what happens when my time comes. How am I going to give this away? Who am I going to give this away? Who am I choosing to handle these affairs for me so that everything goes where I want? And so all of these disciplines combined, when you look at them together, there's so many different mistakes and errors people make. But it really starts with what most people don't want to do is sit down and start writing out what you have, how you want to protect it, how you want to grow it, how you want to disperse it when your time comes. And to me, that's the biggest thing that most people don't do. Nobody wants to think about it. Nobody wants to talk about, hey, what happens if I die? Will everything go
Yeah.
to my wife? Will my children be skipped if my wife remarries later on? And that becomes the main problem is there's just no full proper planning with all of this in one stop. Typically, you're going to see, like we mentioned, your CPA, then you're going to go see a business attorney, then you'll go see an asset protection attorney, then you'll go see an
Yeah.
estate planning attorney. None of these guys talk.
Yeah.
None of them knows what's going on between each other. And the point of Meridian has always been simple. Let's bring all this together under one house. And I joke, but it's actually really true, is I sip coffee and eat kolaches in the morning while I'm talking to my CPA about, hey, what accounts are we protecting? What's the tax on it? What do I need to do from the attorney standpoint to protect this company? And you just don't see that at all
Yeah.
very much in
What
this
lessons would you
society.
say your earliest years as an attorney teach you about how people think and avoid thinking about their legacy?
When it comes to the asset protection, I like I mentioned, you see a lot of the people that they just don't think it's worth protecting. The question I get all the time
Yeah.
is, well, I only have this much. Do I really need to protect it? And to me, I always respond like,
Yeah.
well, how hard did you work to get it? And that's just like me asking you, Wisdom, well,
Yeah.
how hard did you work to get where you're at? Well, probably pretty darn hard. And so then the question becomes, well, do you want to protect that? Do you want somebody else to come in and grab this from you and take it from you? And then once it's gone, you don't get to give it away. It's no longer your legacy. It's somebody
Yeah.
else's property. And I always talk about my wife is from Mexico and I'm there a lot. And I love the Mexican culture because it's a different
Yeah.
type of business culture. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of business to it, but you go to these other countries and you realize that it's not all about litigious suits. Not everybody's worrying about suing people. There are mistakes, but if you make a mistake, I'm not going to turn around and be able to retire off of you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure it happens from time to time,
Ah.
but in the U.S., in the U.S., this is
Yeah.
the main thing. It is a business. People are looking for ways to sue people and take what they have. And the more you have, the
Yeah.
more of a target you become. People start saying, hey, look, this is a really successful guy. And, there was a hair in my French fries. I'm suing his company.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you have a judgment and you're paying people off and things like this. It's really asset protection. It's got this big word, asset protection, but what it ultimately
Yeah.
is protect
Oh,
your legacy.
retirement plan. Wow. That's crazy. It's funny,
Hmm.
right? The reason why it's funny is because it's true. Yeah,
It's a sad
yeah.
reality of where we're
Well,
at
it's not funny
in
to
this
those it
world.
happens to, but I'm just funny. Well, can you share a client break that reminded you why your work?
Oh, there's been many. When talking to people about their dream, I really enjoy the younger people who are coming up and they have this idea for a business and they want to form a business, but they don't know where to start. And then sitting down with them and talking about their business is it's phenomenal opportunity to learn about them, but to hear the ideas of the world. And a lot of the breakthroughs I have had have come from let's form this right. Let's do everything we can to make this right because not all businesses succeed. A lot of them fail. A lot of them end up with a lot of debt. A lot of them can be sued and all these bad detrimental things. And so it becomes, for me, the joy and the breakthrough became do what I can to
Yeah,
protect these people so that they can grow. And that's the beautiful aspect of it when you look at it is your business becomes successful. So now we got to start talking about taxes. How do we save on taxes? It's not just accounting, it's tax strategy. Let's go cut your AGI down through depreciation and other methods so that you're paying less. Let's start putting all this money to the side so that we can plan how to grow it. And then let's make sure that it goes wherever you want it to go, because there's nothing worse than, well, I guess it's not bad for the
Yeah.
person who dies because they'll never know, but for the spouse who think, "Hey, I'm getting this money," or the children who think, "Hey, dad left us something, mom left us something," and then the next thing you know, the new wife gave it all to her kids, and they get nothing, and the business is gone, or the business was destroyed because
Yeah.
it wasn't properly planned out, and through the planning that when the main owner dies, it just sits there. And whatever it's worth, it can no longer do real business because there's no access to bank accounts. There's no access to control it until probate takes place and somebody can come in and at that point try to salvage it, but you're selling it them
Yeah.
for 30 cents on the
Well,
dollar.
it's a sad reality. I know you would have gotten one of the questions or excuses. A lot of times when people hear um, the names and the titles of people like you, they're like, "Oh no, that's quite expensive. How much am I making that I should be getting someone to manage? Like I'm just making pennies, and no, 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 I'm not gotten there yet." What's your response?
My job is to protect you. You may not have a ton of money at this point, but asset protection, estate planning, business formation, it's not like it was 10, 15 years ago where you had to have all this startup money just for the legal aspects. Now it's done fairly inexpensive. And you can build out quite a lot over the course of time. You don't have to do everything at once. If you don't have anything to give away to people and all you're really doing is forming a business, that's just one thing you're doing. A lot of times with tax strategy, we can go in there and we can save the person way more than what our fee is
Yeah.
over the course of the next year. And then it just accumulates from that point on. I think when a lot of people look at the cost of doing things and say, "Oh, well, I need an attorney. It's going to be expensive." A lot of the times the response is, "Well, what happens if you get sued? What happens if this is done incorrectly?" You go on YouTube, you listen to somebody who doesn't have all these qualifications, but they understand a few things, and you do it the wrong way. What happens if you don't even file your business properly come annual compliance every year for your franchise taxes and things like that? And the next thing you know, your business is no longer active
Yeah.
and everything you're doing is in your name. And so all that money you have aside in your name is now attached to you. And if you do something wrong, they're all going to grab it. If we lived in another country where it wasn't such a world of litigation and everybody suing everybody, you could probably get away with a lot more. But like we just mentioned,
Cash
people are
cows.
looking for gaps and they're looking for that way to get in there.
uh,
Exactly. And so how do you avoid going through the wrong route? Well, you got to do it right from the first point in time. But here's the advantage with it is when you start a business, you're understanding that, hey, that there's cost to this. I need to do it properly. It's all tax deductible in most cases. And you do it. You do it because it's the right way. And then you grow that business. To me, I tell a lot of people, look, it's a one-time expense. You're forming something. It
yeah.
costs money to form it.
When you think about the next 10 to 20 years, because we're talking about legacy, we're talking about business, and it depends on how old the listener or the client is. They might be thinking 20 years, they might be thinking 40, 50 years, depending on their age. If they're 20 or 20 something, they might be thinking of the next 50 years or the next 80, 100 years. When you think about that kind of, what do you believe will matter for anyone who wants their wealth to survive changing laws, lawsuits, and taxes? Because these things.
Correct. I think a lot of that comes down to more planning than what people are used to. There's all these different aspects that we got to think about. If you're just sitting it in cash, well, is it growing? So you need to put it in something that can grow over the course of times. You need the ability to make changes to these type of things, the ability to get rid of people who are in charge of this stuff who aren't doing their jobs. And so a lot of times when we build out long-term planning, we're talking about trust. And so we always talk about, well, what do I need a trust? Do I really need something like that? If you're going long-term planning, you absolutely do. A will for most people is simply a disposition of assets. There's no
Yeah.
control over it after you pass away. And so at that point, exactly. And so at that point, you go into more trust planning. And so you're able to build these trusts out kind of almost any way you like it, as long as it's not illegal. And so you can put things that we call like trust protector clauses in there. And so if somebody's not doing something right, this third party can come in and fire the trustee and bring in somebody new. And for years they didn't have this. So you were stuck with a guy who was wasting money unless you went to court and you told the judge, hey, this guy's incompetent. He's blowing our money. He's not doing what he's supposed to. We want a new trustee. Well, now you can avoid a lot of that aspect. Another thing you can do is you can put in certain spendthrift protections. So let's say one of the kids is just a bad kid. He likes to party. He likes to drive fast and drink. And he goes out and he gets into some trouble. Well, you're protecting the trust. You're protecting this money inside of that trust. So nobody can come in and just say, hey,
Yeah.
give me that money for that kid right now. You tell him, no, he has nothing to do with this. He's just a beneficiary. Now, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean they can't put an attachment on him and say, all right, every time you get paid, you have to pay us. But
Yeah.
even that can be planned
So
around by not giving the money
yeah.
directly to the kid. And I always joke because I love the movie Shrek, and him and Donkey are talking, they're walking, and Shrek goes, ogres are like onions. And that's what asset
Layers from the
protection is like.
layers.
It's this onion. You've got all these different layers. Exactly. And the more complex the situation, the more layers you need. Most people don't need to go out, 7, 8 layers, but they need something there because life happens. I was watching Forrest Gump the other day, and as he's running, the bumper sticker guy comes around, and that's the way life works. It happens. And so a lot of it really just becomes when you're planning longer, there's more steps. How is it going to be invested? Who's going to be in charge of it? And what happens sometimes is 50 years down the road, this trust may no longer perform the way it needs to perform, but it's still got all these assets. So now what we'll do is we'll put in certain clauses that, hey, if the trust is no longer serving its purpose, well, we can change the trust up. And so I always think about, especially with trust, these are what the wealthy have always had. And so when we worry about, well, what will happen in the future, they've already thought this through. These are trillions of dollars running through these things. Somebody's already thought it through. So as long as you properly prepare for it, you're able to
Well,
make adjustments as you go along the way.
what could um do what could I would love for you to suggest a couple of things people listening right now can take to safeguard their assets, even if they don't feel worthy enough to start.
Definitely. One of the biggest things I talk about when it comes to asset protection is creating holding companies. A holding company is pretty much exactly what it says. It holds assets for you. And so for people who buy real estate properties, you can put the assets in there. For people who have large bank accounts, take it out of their name and put it into these holding companies. And it's called a holding company because that's ultimately what it is. It's a company that you've created and it holds your assets. Now, you have to be careful when you're creating these things because you don't want to put all your eggs in that one basket. You want to make sure things are separated. And so for people who are doing real estate, they have their own house. And then a lot of times they'll get mom or dad's house when they pass away. So now you have 2 properties. You're separating the properties from each other because if something happens at one property, if it's all in your name or it's all in the same box or the bucket, then everything in that bucket, everything in your name can be up for grabs. So you're separating everything out from each other and you take your operations. So when you have, for example, a business, that's an operation, it's active. There's a very big chance of a lawsuit. Well, that's its own separate piece of the pie. It goes over to the other side where it's an active operating company. And so if it has issues, all your assets are separated from it. We even do this going back to real estate as a perfect example is we'll put your house in one bucket and we'll put the rental company, the property management aspect of it, the guy who goes over it and says, here, tenant, sign this lease, is all a separate business. And so if there is a big lawsuit, most times it's going to go back to that operating company. Well, that operating company isn't set to hold lots of money. It's not a holding company. So if there is a lawsuit, a lot of times it becomes, hey, look, I've got a couple $1,000s in here. If you want to pursue this, I'll be forced to bankrupt the company because I don't have the type of money you're looking for. And my lawyer is going to get all the money for the bankruptcy. Yeah. So what are you going to get to begin with? And that is how you start protecting yourself. When you speak about legacy protection, again, this is build out that will, build out that trust, build out what you need so you make sure that when your time comes, it goes to the right spot. And in this will and in this trust, make sure that you have the authority and the power to let somebody control your business if something happens to you. We see it all the time. Businesses go down because the owner gets sick and can't work. Or he's in a coma, he's unconscious, he loses capacity, and nobody can get into this company, the bank accounts, the controls, sign contracts without court's assistance. It takes a long time to go through the court to get authority to run somebody's company for them. And so it's these little planning things that I always say, if you're going to do it right. Life is too hard to just skittle by. If you're going to invest your time and your money into something, then do it properly. Make sure that all of these things are taken care of.
What would you say is a quote, principle, or life philosophy that guides the way you approach money?
So I always loved playing video games when I was young. And my mom, I grew up in the 80s, and my mom wouldn't let us have anything. She was a teacher. And so every day during the summer, we had to get up around 7:30 and we had to do homework till about 10:30 that morning. And so 3 hours of hard work. My cousin was across the street. He got to play on his Nintendo every morning, and they're having a blast. Come 10:30, I'd run over there because I wanted to play. And so I always liked the Legend of Zelda. Zelda is one of my favorite games. And when you look at Zelda, what is the purpose of Zelda? Well, you're going on an adventure to save the princess, Zelda. Link goes on his adventure. Well, along the way, you're collecting coins. And with these coins, you're able to get these new upgraded weapons, shields, all these different types of clothing to protect yourself and to make life easier along the way. But the purpose of the coins is to make the journey easier. It's not about the journey. We don't go out and collect coins just to collect coins. Have you ever played the game and said, I'm going to get as many coins as I can? No, nobody does that. Or I think it's rubies or something like that. The whole point of life to me is go on the adventure. Don't look at money as your main purpose. Stop collecting coins. Use them as you find them, as you make them, to make your journey easier, better, more enjoyable. But don't make the purpose of life collecting coins.
Thank you.
That's my wisdom for you, wisdom.
For sharing your life philosophy. What does the phrase
say one more time
that life mean?
Well, to me, it can mean a lot. I think wealth that lasts is done properly, done in a way that it can grow, that it can change, that you can do more with it, that you're not tied down to just that wealth. Again, understanding that wealth is a tool to be used to really enjoy your adventure in life. Wealth that lasts is really making sure you use what you collect along your journey in the proper way, that you're gonna grow it, that you're gonna protect it, and that when your demise comes, it passes on to other people who can also enjoy that journey. And so for wealth that lasts, it's just do the proper things. It's hard enough to make money on our own in this world. And it's really terrible when somebody can come in and take that money from you. by simple mistakes. And so making it last, there's so many key components, but it's just making sure you do the right things
Wow.
along the way.
Thank you so much for that advice. Where can listeners learn more about the work you do and also connect?
Definitely. We are Meridian Legal Advisors is the main company. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook. I've got YouTube going up here. Our website's really kind of the best way to catch me. You can see former podcasts as well as some of the things that I'm doing as well. And that is meridianlg.com. And Meridian is spelled MERIDIANLG.com. And you can reach us from there. My email's on there, phone number's on there.
Okay, I'll put
That's
the
probably
links
the
in the
best way to
description
find
so
me.
listeners can just click and go directly to the site. Once again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting.
Thank you, Wisdom.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning into Wisdom Journey. I hope today's episode gave you practical steps and fresh ideas to keep moving forward. If you found value, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with a fellow creator or entrepreneur who'd love to learn too. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and the link in the description for more resources, experiments, and lessons straight to your inbox. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep walking your own wisdom journey. Yeah.